Ooh, I'm excited for today's video. I don't know about you guys, but there was a little series that dropped a second season called Arcane League of Legends. And let me tell you, I have watched it and then rewatched it, and I'm trying not to rewatch it again. I'm not usually into animated series, but trying to think up some board game content that's a little bit more fun and freestyle while having that in the back of my head has led me to this video. So today, we are going to pair Arcane League of Legends characters from the series to different board games associated with them. Before we get into this, I actually just remembered that I need to give a spoilers warning for individuals who have not seen the full Arcane League of Legends series. Season 1 and 2 are on Netflix now. I will definitely be talking about things from the entire series, and therefore spoilers galore throughout this whole video. Well, probably starting now, other than what I've already said in the intro. So yep, we'll get back into it and start off with Maddie. So Maddie is a character that shows up in season 2 and seems to be this quiet little cutesy girl on the police force. Later on, do we find out that she's kind of a big baddie in disguise on the enforcers team. And for that reason, I have paired her with, don't have the game, but I have played it and I'll feature it somewhere here probably. Betrayal at House on the Hill. So in the game, if you haven't played it before, it's a game that you play through a few rounds with however many people you have at the table, and at a certain point, you'll trigger a switch in the game. So there's different situations where it could be like everyone versus a monster, or one versus all, or different iterations of how the story goes based on what's triggered. For me, in this instance, I think of Maddie because Maddie turns out to be a villain character in a big way by the end of season 2. And to me, it's like triggering that effect in Betrayal House on the Hill, where you could just be playing as one of the little bitty kid boy person. Then some role happens, you turn a page, you find out your story, and turns out that the little boy is actually some devil, hellish creature taken over that's trying to hunt down and kill the rest of the people in the house. So for me, it's Betrayal at House on Haunted Hill for that one character situation with Maddie. The next character that I'm gonna look into is Sevika. So Sevika is a character that's part of the underworld with Silco as his right-hand person. There's probably some other suggestions I can already think of that you guys would say, but for me, Anachrony. The mechs in Anachrony are my big connection because she just keeps getting different arms and it's connected to her like a suit, so you jump into the Anachrony suit. But for that fancy little arm that she just keeps picking up, I'm gonna pick Anachrony because getting into those little mechs when you're an actual person just feels like connecting a metal arm to your arm. I don't know. This is the throwaway one. Let's continue, yeah. So for the next character, this was a character that appeared in season 1 and I was afraid was not gonna show up for season 2 as the series was continuing on, but about halfway through, he finally shows up, and that is Heimerdinger. So Heimerdinger is like the grand master knowledge invention boy professor person. And I don't think that I could have a better pairing than Lacerda's inventions. I mean, it's pretty on the ball with Heimerdinger. Him taking knowledge from history because he's 300 years old. In inventions, if you haven't played, you'll be going through different eras of having inventions made and the process and steps that it takes in order to get those inventions created, moved out into the world and spread like wildfire. So for that reason, I'm gonna connect Heimerdinger, the cutest professor ever, with Lacerda's inventions. So a figure that didn't really show up until later in the game, but plays a big part in season 2 is Mel's mother, Ambessa. And I mean, what a boss lady she is, regardless of anything else going on. While she can seem emotional, that emotion tends to just go through to a rage. And for that reason, I am pairing Ambessa with Blood Rage. I mean, again, a title, fitting. How else do we go about this? But thinking of Ambessa being a warrior for her people, kind of like a Viking story, if anything. If you die during battle, then that is like an ultimate victory. Obviously, she didn't want that. There were other things she wanted, which was to kind of be legendary and immortalized. And in Blood Rage, you're working at an area control game where you're playing as different Viking clans, trying to have a glorious death and try to come up with the most glory points at the end of the game. And for that reason, I think Ambessa would kick ass in Blood Rage. So now we're gonna get into a few more characters that pulled at our heartstrings. For our first one, we're going to head for Vander, the lovable father figure for Vi and Powder. So Vander, I guess, had a beef with his brother Silco. It ended badly, and Silco and Vander ended up enemies, but he ended up just retiring his warrior mittens and went and started a bar. So the last drip comes to mind when I think of Vander, and for that reason, we are going to pair him with Distilled. So Distilled, if you didn't already know, is a board game about distilling alcohol. So you'll be gathering different ingredients and pairing them to create different recipes that will get you points at the end of the game. While it's not necessarily built into Vander's fatherly figure character, he is the owner of the last drip and is regularly seen in the bar for a lot of the scenes that he's a part of. For this one, we're gonna go with Distilled. All right, and then how else could we follow up Vander than without his sneaky little brother, Silco? So Silco is a brother who started, or seemed to have started, this war to create the underground into his own independent territory as the city of Zaun. For Silco, given that he's at war with everyone, I'm going to pair him with Wonderland's War. So Wonderland's War is area control, bag building, and some asymmetrical powers. In the game, it's kind of Alice in Wonderland theme, obviously, and it's a wild frickin' tea party with a bunch of crazy characters. And I feel like this is Silco's world, the underground and his city of Zaun, with all the different outcasts, and at a certain point, other people want a head at the table instead of Silco. So for that reason, I am pairing Silco with Wonderland's War. So the next character that we're going to look into is one that was a little bitty part in season 1, came to be a bigger part in season 2, but is one of the characters that I wish they had dived into further, and that character is Ekko. So Ekko is a character that was impacted by the characters around him and kind of is the representative for the outcasts who can't really find footing in this new world that Silco has made, where it's all wars and gangs and a lot of crazy stuff going on. So he tries to take in as many people as he can to this new area that he's found that's thriving regardless of what's going on. They have their own community of like blooming flowers and their own food and sustenance and their own homes. And for that reason, I am pairing Ekko with the game Earth. In Earth, it's more about building from the ground up, and you're finding and building a new ecosystem almost of plants and trees and all that good stuff. For those reasons, that is why I pair Ekko with the game Earth. Okay, so we are getting closer to those main characters, but first we're gonna talk about Mel. So Mel is a character that comes into season 1. She's trying to find a place at the table where her voice could be more strongly heard, and later is kidnapped due to the faults of her mother. But through this step, does she find out more of her true self? Because there's hidden Easter eggs as you're going through season 2 to figure out how certain events were possible. She later finds out that she has magical powers within her. And because of this, I am pairing her with Mageling. So Mageling is a great tiny box games, by the way, that also plays solo and multiplayer and has a few different modes. But in Mageling, you play as a mage and you're trying to battle through a whole bunch of different tasks to try and create peace for, I think it's the Evertree, where the Evertree is dwindling with its power. You're trying to make sure that the Evertree is still alive by the time you go through 5 different stages. For me, it's a similar story of Mel. One, she doesn't know that she's a mage, but once she hits magehood, is what I'll term it for now, then she's on this path that she foresees in trying to fix certain things that were wronged or certain ideas that she had of herself and of her community. Anyways, with that, Mel I'm pairing with Mageling. We're going to start off with Jayce. So Jayce is a character introduced fairly early on, has an experience with some random, we don't know who, magic person that helps him and his mother in a time of need. And from that moment on, he's on this quest to find magic and try to control it and utilize it for good. As he becomes the voice for this city of progress, he kind of loses his way and the point of what he was doing. I am going to pair Jayce with Daitoshi. This might be a hot take, but I'm taking this game and the journey that this series is on as it's not a trilogy, but a storyline from its very first game in the series that I think was Bitoku to its last game in the series that is Sand. But this one is the one where in the game, in your imperialist stage or your capitalist stage, a revolution, industrial revolution of sorts, where it's all about inventing instead of this natured area where you found fantastical creatures. This is now, you've almost enslaved some of those forest creatures and have forgotten about nature and where you came from. In Daitoshi, it's a fun game, but you do have to go and ruin the land and its creatures and enrage them every single turn for you to make progress. And I feel like that is a storyline that is close to Jayce. He tries to make it right for most of the rest of season 2. But for that reason, I am pairing Jayce with Daitoshi. So we've talked about Mel and then talked about Jayce. And then of course we have to follow the next one up with Viktor. So Viktor is a character that meets Jayce after he's gone to the council and talks about magic, thinking that he can control and harness magic to make lives better with different inventions. When he's cast out, Viktor finds him in a really low point and they become partners in trying to create magic and harness it for what they hope is good. But the point that I'm going to look at in Viktor's character arc is once he becomes one with magic has it kind of overtake him, where he's kind of become more machine than man, in that the further he goes into season 2, the further he loses himself and his emotions, which give him only logical thinking and reasoning to come up with the best solution for everyone. And because of that, I am pairing Viktor with Turing Machine. Turing Machine is based off the historical figure who made a code or decodifying machine. That's pretty much what you're doing in the game, but it is pure logic and pure deduction as you're playing the game. You're just dealing with numbers and facts and problem solving, finding different solutions. Viktor ends up becoming that, where there's no emotion, but he becomes a machine in trying to solve the problem of humanity, this constant struggle of war and peace and good and bad. And because of that, I am pairing him with Turing Machine. So with 3 more characters left to go over, we are going to discuss Caitlyn. So Caitlyn is a character, we meet her very young. She lives in an environment that's pretty privileged. Her family sits on the council, and then later when she joins the Enforcers, she wants to go study the world and know better about what's going on in the underground that she might not have perfect information about. So she meets Vi, and then something very traumatic happens and spends a lot of season 2 just hunting for Jinx. And because of this, I am pairing Caitlyn with Mr. Jack. So in the game of Mr. Jack, one player plays as a detective and the other player plays as Mr. Jack, who is a murderer? I'm not sure if it says in the game. But anyways, I feel like it's a take on Jack the Ripper, and therefore if you know anything about that, then this is the game. So one character is a detective, and they don't know which one of the 8 characters on the board is Mr. Jack, so that they can take them and put them in jail or whatever it is they do. But the detective is running around trying to play different characters' unique abilities to their advantage to try to find out which character is Mr. Jack. And Mr. Jack uses the characters in the same way over 8 rounds, hopes that under the guise of darkness, they're able to either slip away out of the detective's reach or exhaust the detective's attempts at trying to find him over the end of 8 rounds. So I pair this with Caitlyn, one, for the obvious reason she's working in the Enforcers, but she's also working really hard at just trying to find Jinx. So for that reason, I am pairing Caitlyn with Mr. Jack. And we come to our last 2 big characters, Vi and Jinx, or Jinx, who is also Powder. For that reason, let's go to Jinx first. So first we find Powder as a child, sweet little thing, little inventor genius who is a little bit clumsy and therefore ends up in situations where she feels more useless when she wants to help. Obviously, there's certain points where this one heist goes really wrong, then Powder just wanting to help and causing a huge series of events that come off and send her on her way into this wild new character of Jinx. And Jinx kind of just runs rampant, thinking without consequence, almost like 100% emotions in everything she does. It's this constant battle between her being Powder and her being Jinx. So because of that, I feel like the obvious choice is Jekyll versus Hyde. So in Jekyll versus Hyde, this is a 2-player trick-taker game where one player plays as Jekyll and one player plays as Hyde. And if you know the story, that it's one person who's constantly in a struggle between 2 different sides of himself. Obviously, there's more to that story than just that, but the overall theme of it. And in Jekyll versus Hyde, Hyde is trying to maintain balance and have a similar amount of tricks won by both players, and Jekyll is trying to go to extremes by either having won no tricks or winning all the tricks. So for me, it feels like Jekyll versus Hyde hits a nail on the head when it comes to Powder / Jinx's character throughout the series of Arcane. But yep, that is Powder and Jinx as Jekyll versus Hyde. And so our last character for the day is Vi from Arcane. And Vi has a very complicated situation going on from the outset, where it feels like she's pulled in two different directions. She later struggles with that throughout, while also having to have connections with people that get cut off based on decisions she made or didn't make throughout the series. And for that reason, I feel it's only right to pair her with King's Dilemma. And I mean, look at that face. That is the face of Vi constantly in the series. So there's a lot of freaking dilemma going on when you're thinking about Vi. And for that reason, I feel like King's Dilemma is a great pairing, because in the game, you and a bunch of players take on the roles of different houses, and you'll be having to figure out and come to a consensus on different laws that'll pop up for different storylines. Some of those storylines and some of those laws that you'll have to say, do you agree on enacting or not enacting? Do you give people food or starve them for more money? Certain situations, I don't want to spoil too much because it is a campaign game. So, I mean, I won't go into too much, but I feel like that mimics a lot of what is going on with Vi as she continues her journey through the series in trying to figure out what the right thing to do is when there's not necessarily a good answer, because there will always be consequences for her actions. But for that reason, we've got King's Dilemma. I just have a notable board game to put in for most all of the characters, not all of them, but just in general, because I didn't pair this game with anyone and I feel like it should be paired with someone, but maybe you can come up with who the best pairing is for the game of Vindication. I mean, this is mostly just being thrown in because one, it's one of my favorite games, and two, I mean, you start off the game as a dirty, rotten scumbag. So how could I not include this when there are so many dirty, rotten scumbags who are trying to vindicate themselves? So with that, we have come to the end of this very random video that I really just wanted to do to geek out about Arcane and board games paired together. I'm not sure if I'll do more of these, pairing well-known characters with their board game equivalents. But you can let me know in the comments, and I'll be back with you next time on the Flippity Flip. I'd like to stop burping so that I can get my words out. You can talk about those in the comments. I mean, this is pointing to my lap, but I mean, like, when the video's done, you get it. Anyways, oh, whoops. I should, I've started this video and I haven't put a spoilers notification on. Anyways, I say a lot. I need to stop that. Stop that, Danley. Okay. I should have put these proper. That sounds like, what song is that from? I don't know. Anyways, main area, whatever it's called. Over. Mixed bag of a game and it's a bag builder. Yeah, that was great, Natalie. Little genius of himself. A genius of himself. So Ekko. What impact that is having? No. Sound fantastical freakers. Something is on my lip. I need to stop burping. Shoulder and be like, shoulder? A like right on, nail on the head